Chapter 25, How to Reverse the Effects of a Combinotron 2001 Easy Step. The bionic booger boy was defeated. He flopped unconscious into a giant boogery blob that spread across several city blocks and nearly 4 whole pages as reporters surrounded this massive oozing body. Soon Melvin's mother and father showed up with the Combinotron 2000. "We saw what was happening on the news," they said, "and we want the world to know that we're going to create a new machine that will reverse the process that turned our son into this monster. If we work together, it should only take a few months to build." "Why don't you guys just take the batteries out of the Combino thingy and switch them around?" said George. "Wouldn't that reverse the machine's effect?" "Well," laughed Melvin's father, "obviously you don't know anything about science, little boy. You can't expect to reverse the effects of a highly complex cellular molecularizing combinotron just by switching the batteries around. That type of thing only happens in obnoxious children's books." "Ahem," said George self-consciously. "Well, why don't you just give it a try anyways?" "All right," said Mr. Sneedly, rolling his eyes and smirking. He quickly switched the batteries around and powered up the machine. "But I'm only doing this to prove a point to you kids. It's not gonna work. No way. Not in a million years. And anybody who thinks it might is a complete idiot. It goes against all the popular laws of logic and science." He aimed the newly reconfigured Combinotron 2000 at his son and fired. Chapter 26, Blast. Suddenly, there was a terrific explosion. The bionic booger boy burst into 3 huge chunks of glistening snot and twisted metal, which smacked onto 3 nearby buildings and stuck like glue. In the center of the explosion, surrounded by smoke, stood Mr. Krupp and Melvin. "Well, what do you know?" said Mr. Sneedly. "My idea worked." George and Harold rolled their eyes. It wasn't his idea, huh? "Now step aside, Kitty," said Mrs. Sneedly as the 2 scientists marched off to tell the reporters all about their brilliant and inspirational scientific breakthrough. They're a lot like Melvin. But as the smoke around Mr. Krupp and Melvin began to clear, it became obvious that they were not quite back to normal. Apparently, the newly reconfigured Combinotron 2000 had accidentally morphed Mr. Krupp and Melvin together. "Don't worry," Mr. Sneedly told the reporters. "All I need to do is zap them one more time. That should set everything straight." He fired up the Combinotron 2000 again and prepared to blast away. "I sure hope this separates their bodies," said George. "Me too," said Harold. Blast! Chapter 27. To make a long story short, it did. In chapter 28. Happy ending. "You know something," said George. "This is the first time one of our books actually had a happy ending." "You're right," said Harold. "Usually they end with screaming, 'Oh no!' and me screaming, 'Here we go again.' But we got lucky this time, I guess." "What do you mean lucky?" said Mr. Krupp. "It was my invention that saved the world. You guys are so immature." "Huh?" said George. "I want to see both of you bubs in my office pronto," yelled Melvin. "I'm going to punish you boys so bad your kids will be born with detentions." "What?" said Harold. Sounds like they got a little switched up there, huh? Suddenly, a giant extendable octoclaw reached out from one of the 3 huge chunks of boogers. It grabbed the Combinotron 2000 out of Mr. Sneedly's hands and smashed it to smithereens on the ground. Mr. and Mrs. Sneedly ran away screaming as the 3 humongous robotic booger chunks came to life. Slowly, they began dripping down the sides of buildings, each one energizing itself with a single twin-turbo 9000 SP5 Kung Fu titanium lithium alloy processor. As the huge booger chunks oozed closer and closer, they began sprouting strange-looking metallic eyeballs and huge, menacing robotic limbs. Suddenly, the 3 ridiculous robot boogers leaped towards George, Harold, Sulu, Mr. Krupp, and Melvin. It's getting so exciting. And the chase was on! "Oh no!" screamed George. Here we go again, screamed Harold. That is why this book is part 1. And we will have to find book part 2 to find out what happens. Woohoo! Yay for Captain Underpants. And that's the end of this read aloud. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.